This little clip is devoted to powerlessness and its frequent sidekick, fear. We live with our illusions of control. James Kugel, in his wonderful book, In the Valley of the Shadow, he points out that we tend to push the elevator button repeatedly, and although deep down we know that this is pointless, we also feel that somehow we are in control of our time and in control of our lives. And often our illusions do the trick, but every once in a while, such as times in which there is a pandemic, we're forced to face our absolute lack of control, and then the fear sets in. In this case, I think the fear is exacerbated by the fact that we're faced with an enemy that we can't see, we can't reason with it. It's a tiny germ that can be hiding anywhere. It can be hiding everywhere. So all of this reminds me of Megillat Esther, which we read recently on the holiday of Purim. And in that story, fear is the ultimate weapon that's used by two of the story's antagonists. One is Memuchan and one is Haman. And the two of these are conflated by some very clever midrashim that notice that they have essentially the same modus operandi in their speech. They both use the tactic of fear-mongering, one Memuchan against women and Haman against the Jews. First, Memuchan tells the king that his queen, Vashti's act of rebellion, could be infectious. It could attach itself to untold numbers of other women. And these women are scattered throughout the kingdom in just about every home. They are these silent, dispersed forces that could cause a rebellion of massive proportions. And this was meant to instill fear in Ahasuerus to the point that he went on to depose the queen. It's hard to miss the parallel to Haman, who presents Jews as the dangerous, ubiquitous, virtually invisible forces. Yeshno am echad mefuzar umeforad bein ha'amim, a nation scattered, invisible. Basically what he concludes is that killing this deadly virus is the only way to protect the good people. On one level, the parallel between these two pieces of the Megillah speaks to the infectious nature of bigotry. And I think it's often true that once people engage in one form of bigotry, in this case misogyny, it's easy to slide into another, in this case anti-Semitism. And in fact, in her book on anti-Semitism, Deborah Lipstadt compares this slippery slope of bigotry to a fire, in which she says, like a fire spread by an arsonist, passionate hatred and conspiratorial worldviews reach well beyond their intended target. They are not rationally contained. So all of this brings us to our very own coronavirus. I think that we might argue that this takes the fear that's set out in the Megillah to all new levels. As Memuchan and Haman argued, the thing that we can't see or control is the most frightening thing of all. In some way, we might say it's mefuzar umeforad beinenu. It's scattered among us, lurking darkly, dangerously everywhere. Making matters even worse, we're living with a Purim-like sense of v'nahafochu, a reversal, but this reversal is of the cruelest possible type. Normally, in times of fear, we draw closer to our loved ones. We find solace in our circles of people, with family, friends, neighbors, colleagues. And now the hidden enemy may be attached to our loved ones, and we can protect ourselves only by pulling away from them. So, it's bad. But Purim is over, and now we're heading toward Pesach, the story of redemption. And I just to speak about the story for a moment, as a first signal of better times, God speaks to Moshe from a burning bush. And of course, as we know, that bush is not consumed. Many have tried to explain the image. My favorite attempt is that made by the Midrash Tanchuma, which is brought in part by Rashi. And when the Midrash asks, why does God choose a little bush instead of a more imposing tree? And the answer is, God wants to communicate to the people, Imo anochi b'tzara. I'm with the people. I'm with you in your time of trouble. What God is saying, though, is that it's not time for redemption yet. The Israelites are still in the depths of slavery. And God's first words to Moshe are not about salvation, but they are words of empathy. It's as if God is saying, well, I'm not going to cure this right now, but I can stand with you as you suffer. I can even help. I can even feel some of that suffering with you. I thought about comparing this to a doctor who might not be able to offer an immediate cure to a suffering patient, but can offer a good amount of support, standing by the patient's side throughout the ordeal, and that in itself gives that person strength. I think in some ways it might be helpful to look at our current situation as our burning bush moment. Basically, to have faith that eventually salvation will come, but in the meantime, to find creative ways to find support, companionship, and protection. Just like we're being asked to draw on the reserves in our pantries, the reserves in our bank accounts, I think maybe this is our moment to draw on our emotional reserves and our spiritual reserves. The love and the connections that we have stored up over the course of our lives, those relationships that are deeply within us, this is the time to lean on those. And we know that they're in there. In addition, although I never thought I would say this, I think it's time to tap in not just with our hearts, but it's time to actually literally tap in on devices such as the one I'm using at this moment, to keep up our personal relationships, our educational efforts, our inspirational potential, to find whatever we can in an electronic way. And it's actually really remarkable to witness the potential for the coming together of the world in all new ways. And this is a kind of reverse Tower of Babel moment that's being forced on us by these microscopic particles. I think it's time to tap into our inner reserves of spirituality, to find creative ways to feel God's presence, to feel that sense of Imo Anochi B'Tzara. Looking ahead, we are moving toward Pesach, which signifies an end to plagues of all sorts. This year, at the small Seder that I'm going to have, as has been ordered by our country's Ministry of Health, I look forward to celebrating our redemption from yet another Mitzrayim. Here we are again in yet another narrow, confined Mitzarim, of these dangerous space. And at my Seder, I look forward to reciting with great kavanah, Mi Mitzrayim ge'altanu, Mi cherev hitzaltanu, Mi dever milatetanu, Mi cholayim ra'im v'ne'emanim dilitanu. I look forward to praising God for redeeming us from Egypt, for saving us from pestilence, and yes, for delivering us from pernicious and lasting diseases. I look forward to declaring with extra meaning this year, Lo et avotenu bilvad ga'al hakadosh baruch hu, ela af otanu ga'al imahem. God delivered not only our ancestors, but us today, here as well. V'chein yehi ratzon.